It's got to go to the cloud. I have no space. All right, welcome back. So we're talking about organizing our main points. So you have a 5 to 7 minute speech. We have to allocate our time specifically and dedicate it to those main points. All right, what about these main points? Well, y'all, it is suggested that for a 5 to 7 minute speech, you have between 2 to 5 main points. There will be plenty of time within those 2 to 5 main points, but if you go over the 5, it is going to be way too many for that amount of time. And if we're going below, we're not getting then it's one main point, then it doesn't make any sense. It's not even a speech. So 2 to 5 main points is ideally what you want, and thinking about how you allocate that. If you have 5 main points, well, then you could give 1 minute to each main point. And that's when you start to think, oh goodness, wow, this really is going to need to be narrowed in its focus a bit more. So with those main points, or with the concepts of organizing those main points, remember, and we've talked about this before, each of you have now written your general purpose. A friendly reminder, because not everybody did this correctly, but hopefully you got it through the feedback and through the corrections. Your general purpose only has 2 words. Remember, it is the words to and inform. That is all you are doing in this speech. And when you write anything more than just to inform on that general purpose space, it unfortunately will lead you down a path of having to then write more for your specific purpose. And then you're like, what am I talking about? I'm talking about 400 different things. So the general purpose, all you are going to write there is to inform. That is it, no more. Then we narrow our focus, and each of you were able to specifically come up with what you are going to talk about for this speech. Purpose. And we came up with the concept to inform my audience about blank. Remember this particular one of those things? It's called a formula. There we go. There is our formula. So right, to inform my audience about, and then there's the thing. So now, y'all, we are going to be working on our thesis statement. And we know that the thesis statement, hopefully, you remember that all your thesis statement is from the last 2 speeches is your specific purpose plus your what, everybody? Main points. So we need to keep coming up with our 2 to 5 ways to inform my audience about blank. So what ways are we going to do that? Well, over the course of our semester, we have spoken about some types of organizational patterns. With our introduction in both our artifact speech, we talked about organizational patterns such as chronological, and we also talked about spatial organization. Today, we are going to talk about the different patterns of organization that you can employ to best organize and structure your topic specifically for your audience. Depending upon how you wrote your general purpose will determine how we organize our main points. Let me show you this general purpose here. To inform my audience about Disneyland. My topic falls under one of 5 categories. Remember, or 7. So there were specific categories. What category does this fall under?
Place.
Great, fantastic. So now I know this is a place. I can then start to strategically think, wow, and this is the only reason why. People have done research for a really long time. Public speaking came about back in this rhetoric, right? 430 BC. Aristotle started writing about ethos, pathos, and logos and how to write this. Y'all, this stuff has been around for decades. Mostly it's mixed with psychology in this form of organization. I mean, there's a lot of psychology in public speaking anyway, but we'll talk about it in this way. People have researched how individuals best absorb and understand information for quite some time. So based upon whatever category your speech fits into, they're going to say, hey, you should organize it this way, because that's how people best make sense of that type of category. So the different categories that your topic specifically can fit into are things like chronological organization, spatial, these are the different types of organization that you can do. So chronological, spatial, topical, and cause and effect. Let's talk about what those are and how to get our brain around it in terms of our specific topic. So the first type of organization, let's go. The first type of organization that I want to lay out here is going to be chronological organization. Chronological organization, we have in fact spoken about before, and chronological organization deals with time. So over time, past, present, future. You can do it by decades. You can do it by years. Chronological organization essentially is going to give you a beginning, middle, and end in that specific order. We spoke about this a little bit last time, and I don't know if it was in for which speech, but we talked about, like, movies are really creative and have these special and unique ways of bringing you about information and kind of taking you on this creative journey where you maybe get illuminated on your own to what's happening. But we don't have the 2 hours of creativity. We only have 5 minutes. And so specifically, if we're going to make something and we're going to talk about something, we want it to be as clear as absolutely possible. Look how pretty, speaking of clear, look at this day, y'all. Look at the ocean. I mean, come on. Okay. So we want to make that as clear as possible. That said, if I am talking about a person, an event, or you can organize all of these chronologically. And of course, you can do them chronologically. It's just thinking, like, is it going to be most effective right now? What's going to be most effective for my organizational pattern? So if we think about a person, right, and an individual, think about how we talk about people. We wouldn't want to know what happened at the middle of their life and then at the end and then at the beginning. Logically, that doesn't make sense. We'll start to talk about the beginning, the middle, and potentially the end, or what happened at the starts, how did it develop, and how is it going? So if we think about a person, and this is what I was doing a little bit before with my class, is I did something like to inform my audience about Janet Jackson, right? There we go. That could be my specific to inform my audience about Janet Jackson. I know that this is a person. To inform my audience about the history of Janet Jackson's music career. Now I also have a good cue that this could go chronologically. Why? Because I wrote the word history in that. And that gives me the idea that it's going to go back and it's going to come forward. So even if you wanted to talk to inform my audience about there we go. I am still talking about the individual, and I've narrowed it down to a specific part of their life. And even within those specific times, I can still chronologically organize it. Now, the reason I'm also talking to you about this organization is that I want you to know it can be done with our main points, because that's how we're going to organize this for our thesis. But keep the chronological, spatial, and topical organization in mind, as it is also going to come in very handy to organize something called your subpoints for that skeleton we're going to be getting into doing shortly. So a person can be organized, this idea of Janet Jackson. To inform my audience about Janet Jackson, I will describe the start of her life, her middle life, and what she is doing now, right? If I want to talk about her music career, I will discuss her career in the, and I could do 1980s to 90s, 90s to 2000s, and right? And those could be my ways of organizing it if I wanted to. And I could talk about, I will discuss her acting in her youth, her 20s, and today. If that makes sense, and beyond. But now at least I have these different ways that I can organize the same concepts that maybe I wanted to talk about. The same things happen in an event. If you think about any type of history book, the History Channel, the news, a news documentary, and they are telling you about an event that happened, the events of 9/11, D-Day, the Tet Offensive, or to inform my audience about the Oscars. There you go. Now what we can do is we can, talk about this particular event if I wanted. And I can do it in historical order. If I was talking about, to inform even if I want to tell you about the Electric Daisy Carnival, I will describe how it came to be. Its beginnings as a festival and what it is today. Again, I'm keeping it in threes. You can make 4 or 5s if you would like to. But at least this is describing how it came to be, what's going on. The same thing happens with a concept or a phenomena. Think about any of the textbooks that you read when we learn about particular theories or ideologies or potentially concepts. That's what it's called. That's where we go into. So something like to inform my audience about symbolic, which I did last week, convergence theory. I will talk about how the theory came to be, how it developed in the 1960s to 80s, and finally where it is today, right? If I wanted to talk about it in that way and how it has developed over time. The same thing with a phenomena. If the phenomena is something that can be done chronologically, we'll talk about how a phenomena can also be done as a cause and effect. But we'll talk about a phenomena as in if you want to talk about tornadoes, what does it take to start this? How does it start to develop? And then how does it come to be? What is it, right? So there's steps about how that develops and how it goes. This chronological organization hopefully helps you to see a little bit more about how it will go. Does anybody have a person or an event or a concept that they wanted to work on even together or thinking about? Big deal. We can always, come back to it or do it again. The next type of topic, and I'm going to bring this down here again, just so that we remember. is spatial organization that has to do with space. No, not that outdoor one up in the sky, but instead spatially organizing, meaning like according to direction and using the actual space or the thing to do so. So this means like up, down, right to left, around in a circle. Ultimately, start to also think about mapping, because if you have a place or you have an object, those will be best organized spatially. We talked about this a little bit last time with the artifact speech, that if you have an object, oftentimes it is easiest to describe the object by talking about the things of it and maybe breaking it down by its pieces. And that would be a good way to encompass all those concepts into one. So if I was doing a car, right, to inform my exterior of the car, the interior of the car, and the right? So these are specific aspects of it, and it really like goes in some kind of directional form of that way. A place is the same way. So let's go back. If we're talking here about Disneyland, these are all the things I want to talk about. How am I going to organize a 45 main point speech? Well, since it's a place, one of the ideas we could do is we could do it in an organization of a direction. And you're like, yeah, Amanda, but there's no directions on here. I know, but it's okay. Let me show you how it works. So when we have Disneyland, and I mean, that's even just the visual aid, which is so easy. Let me grab it and we'll go, and we're like, yay. And I'm like, Disneyland map. Did we do this before? Have we already done this? Share my desk. Oh, no. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing this, but if we start to see, and then you're like, oh yeah, let me. Yeah, great. We'll just go with this one. Any day now. Okay, here we go. Oh, Star Wars. I forgot about that whole shenanigan. Let's pretend it's not there. If we see our map, right, we can certainly organize. There's rides, there's food, there's characters. All of those things are all around. So if I wanted to inform you about Disneyland, a great way I could do it would be by taking you on a tour, right? Let me organize it spatially. So to inform you a little bit about Disneyland, I'll tell you about, what? Main Street, USA. Then I'll tell you about Tomorrowland. We'll go back here to Fantasyland and Toontown. And then finally, we'll end up over here in Adventureland and Frontierland. If we do that, then I don't want to get crazy with it, y'all. But let me show you. I think that, hold on, almost there. So there we go. If you see it, what we could do, your first main point is, Main Street. And what am I going to talk about? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the attractions, the history, the food. Then in my second main point, get crazy, y'all. What am I going to talk about? Yep, Tomorrowland. And then the same thing happens. Am I going to be able to talk about all the food, all the attractions? No, but I can at least give you a general idea. And I can give you a couple of those things that you can, in fact, hear about and talk about. So that's a definite way that you could do it. I'd assume who did the Las Vegas Strip, or if you were doing a specific hometown or a specific state or something like that, and you wanted to do it by direction or by location, that's always a fun thing to do as well. The next type of organization, which all of us are familiar with, is topical organization. Topical organization is one that is organized, oh, this is crazy, topically, meaning different topics that all support that specific purpose. So the exact same thing is going to happen. Let's say I have this specific purpose to inform my audience about Disneyland. It is a place, but y'all, topical organization can be done for every single one. A person, a place, an object, concept, or phenomena. The only reason I teach topical last is because it oftentimes becomes this catch-all way to do things. And it's not always like a catch-all. If you have a lot of things that you want to cover, topical organization is going to be great. You're like, man, I want to talk about the history, and I want to talk about the rides, and I want to talk about the attractions. Okay, then just do that. To inform my audience about Disneyland, I will tell you about the history of the park, the attractions, and the food you can find. That way, now, although it may not be organized in that way, we know that we'll get an understanding of the history. You'll talk about a couple of the different attractions there that are popular, and then maybe some of the interesting food. It won't necessarily be on a tour, but we will still get those ideas. The same thing happens for Janet, right? Now, there are three different things. It's not necessarily in chronological order, but I will still be able to talk about how Janet Jackson was a part of those things. So chronological, spatial, topical. We've seen these patterns of organization again. Remember, keep those in your pocket, not only for your main points, but also for your subpoints. The last type is something called cause and effect. Some of you, whereby you will organize the first main point as the things that created that second main point, right? So cause and effect we can look at. Some of you have already, you have cause and effect because of how you've written that specific purpose to something like to inform my audience about how COVID-19 has impacted people's mental health. This was somebody's, right? Main point one, mental health. We can do something like, I will describe how COVID, how the virus works on the brain, and then how that how it affects one's mental health. So the cause and effect is always only going to be two main points. It will be whatever the cause was, and then whatever that effect will be. Cause and effect speeches most oftentimes are done again with concepts or phenomena that we want to describe. Another way that you could maybe do a concept is a history topic, as in like what caused. We have somebody right now who's doing, for example, like to inform my audience about what is creating higher prices in the US, right? So what are these higher prices? The first thing will be by first, but describing the issues that are impacting the economy, and then showing how that is affecting. Something like that. So we'll do our cause and our effect. So for these different types of organizational patterns, does everybody start to see how you can take the concepts, the research that you've already done, and then put those main points into a plan that's not only going to help you get your goals and your information across and accomplished, but also assist in helping that audience keep focused and on track? Does anybody have a concern like, oh crap, I don't know what mine falls into, or I don't understand this? All right, then let us move forward. I am going to move us on. So we'll keep this here, this idea of, oh, Disneyland. I was talking about a place. Yeah, so the same thing. Oh, and I did that one with Disneyland. Okay, good. Oh, this is what I wanted to show y'all. So beyond the amazing map of Disney, hold please. I want to show you a little something called Wikipedia one more time. Now, I know I Wikipedia'd with y'all last time to show you a little bit about coming up with and discovering different options for your speech topic. But the other thing, again, that we can utilize our Wikipedia for is to start to see how they organize the particular main points. And how they also are organizing their subpoints. So what we see anytime you're going to look at a Wikipedia, when you're going to look at a textbook, a documentary, something like this, a website, they're going to have it organized in the same way, depending upon the particular topic. So for example, if you'll see here, this is starting off in chronological order to describe Janet Jackson. It then goes into other topics, but if you see here, this entire way would be a way to chronologically order her life if you wanted to. If you wanted to simply focus on something like topically, her life and career, her artistry, and her legacy, great. But if you see here as well, even her artistry could be an entire speech of its own. To inform my audience about the artistry of Janet Jackson, I will first describe to you her music and voice. I will then describe to you her artistry through her videos and her stage performance. And finally, I'll describe to you the artistry through her influences. That would be an easy way to do it. But the best part is that they are going to, any type of topic, even if it's COVID-19, is going to give you some type of organizational pattern here that you could go into. Cause, right? What's happening in the body, so you can look at it here, or how is it diagnosed? How is it prevented? So you can even do something like that. To inform my audience about COVID-19, I'll tell you the signs and symptoms, the ways that it will impact your body, and finally ways that you can prevent yourself, or the many ways you can prevent yourself. Let me give you 5 different ways to help keep yourself healthy and prevented from COVID-19, right? So there's a lot of different ways that the, in my opinion, that the Wikipedia can help you and can simply inform you a little bit further about a more effective way, or at least just, again, working smarter, not harder. Somebody's already done it. Just take that because you know it works. It's the same thing as like your textbook. They've written it in that way and organized it because they know college students understand that layout. So why not try it? Makes sense to everybody? Okay, cool. There is now, I am going to open up. Let me show. I'm going to open up the sample outline for each of us to take a look at here. And if you wanted to, at this point, start to get yourself ready to have like a document open and type along with me, that'd be great. Hold on, hold it, hold, pausing the recording. So the guidelines are on the right side. The left side shows you the preparation outline. Like I said, the preparation outline is the outline that you are going to turn into me on the day that you are required to speak. But you do have a good 4 weeks to continue to work on this outline. The preparation outline has a lot of different requirements to it that are to be followed. And on the right side of the screen, you are going to see those guidelines of what you need to include, not only to complete the outline, but also to get your full credit. I have us start working on the skeleton, and what you're going to see is that the assignment that you did last week, this week, the skeleton, it's all going to build on to this outline itself. And so when I have you today get out a blank piece of paper to start writing it, we'll write these concepts together. So what I want you to see here is some guidelines from me. The first thing that I want you to note, and this is much like that to inform, do not forget this. Are you all ready? Here's what we call a wake-up call in public speaking. This is where you say, this is, if you learn nothing else today, just remember this. And it's called keep the document single spaced. You are going to be single spacing your sentences, but you are double spacing between points. What does that mean? That means if you see, on this side of the page on the left, you will have symbols and sentences and points ultimately. But if you see, you single space your points and you double space between those symbols. So the sentences themselves are single spaced, but you double space between the symbols. If you start your speech as being double spaced, then, for example, you're going to have to go back. Oh, well, that was a ridiculous idea, but you're going to have to go back each time and then double space, and then you'll have to go in, and it's annoying. So I would single space it, the entire thing, and just know that you will double space after each symbol. Does that at all make sense to anybody, or not make sense when I say single space your document? You're going to double space between your symbols, but keep a single space for now. All right, hopefully that helps. The second thing here is it says write a MLA heading and header with page number for each page. So let's start with your MLA heading. This will be the MLA heading. And then you will have a header, which is your last name, and a page number for each page. See, there's page 2, page 3, and I'll go over with how to do that right in a second. Below your MLA heading, you are going to put a title of your speech. The title in MLA format is not bolded. It isn't underlined. It isn't italicized, quoted. It is simply written in the same font, and each word is capitalized. That is the only thing. Then what you are going to do, and if you do not have a catchy title right now, that's okay. You can use a space holder, and you can simply say something like space holder or catchy title here for right now. No big deal. If you see, oh my goodness, the general purpose, specific purpose thesis statement, you are going to be left aligning and writing those at the top of your paper as well, so we know where this speech is going. You will you will label your introduction, your conclusion, the body, and the transition. So if you see in this sample outline, the introduction is labeled, the body, transitions, are each labeled, and then the conclusion is also labeled here. There is not a requirement or a pattern of like, ooh, those need to be underlined or bolded or whatever. That is up to you to decide for those labels. Your introduction and your conclusion are going to be written in paragraph form. You will also be able to outline them, but we're not going to talk about that now. Instead, what you will write for the purpose of this assignment is simply just put a space holder. Just write the introduction and then put space holder. You are going to, however, for the preparation outline and for this assignment, the skeleton, you're going to need to label and write out your transitional statements. So you are going to write out the transition statement to let us know what's coming up in the next point. Then we will talk about these symbols. In this speech, you will have a pattern of symbolization. If you see this A, this 1, this 2, this I, and then you will also have a pattern of indentation. So what does that mean? Well, it means that every time you have a new supporting idea, you are going to place it underneath the idea above it so that we know the topic here supports the topic here. The topic here, what? Oh, that must mean it supports the topic here. So if you see there's this pattern of indentation and symbolization that works to develop and go out with the speech. Now, if you notice, there isn't a true and tried pattern. It's not like, oh, there's an A and then there's a 1 and an I and an A and a B and an A and a, no. It's going to depend upon your speech. I am not going to be able to tell you what symbol equals what concept. It's because you are going to be writing your ideas together. I'm going to close up the sample, knowing that it is there for you in your speech. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go through and we're going to start writing this together. Every symbol is going to be only written in one sentence, and there's only one idea per sentence. So keep that in mind, and we'll go through that, meaning that you will only have one sentence on every single symbol. The second you put an ending punctuation mark, like a period, hit return, and start a new symbol, because each symbol represents a new idea. So if each of you will, in fact, pull out a new document, we can work on doing something like this together. So each of you here, what we're going, and is everybody ready? Like, do you understand why we would write this together? Just so that you can start to build this together to make sure that it's right. You can always bring this into your conference as well, as we can continue to build on it. So how an MLA, hopefully from the library, you started to learn that the Modern Language Association is simply a standard of writing. It is a standard of writing so that anybody who is writing in that form understands where to look and how the flow is going to go, how it is going to be structured, what specific things mean. And so in MLA, you are not required to have a title page. Instead, we use a title on the first page of your work. And that starts out with your first name and last name. So go ahead and put that in there. I'm going to use my maiden name, so it makes sense. And remember to make sure that your document is what? That's right, single spaced. I'm also going to turn this into Times New Roman because that's typically what your MLA will call for. And the font will be a 12-point font. I'm going to double space, going to push it twice. And then the next thing on this line is your professor's name. So I'm going to put Professor Witten, going to double space. The next piece of information is your class's title and the number. And then the last thing is going to be the date. In the case of MLA, it's going to ask you for the date first, then the month, then the year. The comma is an American choice. On the Modern Language Association, European does not use the comma. It is a preference and not a standard because those two things are different. Up to you, meaning. Sound good? So has everybody written their title here or in whatever document they have? Fantastic. Since I'm working in this version of Word, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into the insert. And my favorite thing to do a header is not to insert a header, but is instead to insert my page number. I just do it this way because it's easier for me. I insert the page number here, and the page number is going to go at the top. Again, it's a header, and it's going the right side, and you are going to show it on the first page. That is an MLA requirement also. I have put the number here. I'm going to double click in this area to get my cursor. Simply going to tab this. I'm going to click right in front of it, and I'm going to write my last name because MLA calls for you to have your last name as well as the page number. That's how we know. And then I'm going to go back, and if you note, this font and this font are different. So I'm going to ensure that the font in my header is also a Times New Roman because that's what it calls for. I can get out of there by clicking back into my document, but is everybody up on understanding those first two requirements? Hold on, everybody. What was that? Sorry. Okay. So we now have our MLA title. We now have our header. Our next thing that we need is our title of our paper, and that's going to be centered. Now I have no clue what I'm going to write, but I know I'm going to center it, and I know I'm just going to write catchy title as a space saver. I'm going to double space, and then I'm going to pull it right back on over to the left side. And the next thing that you are going to add, like it said, is going to be from your assignment that you've written, your general purpose, specific purpose, and your thesis statement. And you're going to write those out as approved. You can just copy and paste. And then once you are done there, you will double space again, and you will begin by labeling the first thing that comes in a speech, which is, everybody, your introduction. And because the introduction at this time is not going to be written for the purpose of your skeleton assignment, you can simply write space saver. Then we will go in and we can write the body of our speech. I need to label that. And the first thing that we are going to do to start getting into our body is get into our first transition, which I must label as well. Our main point will be the first thing that we will go into, of course, but I need to start the process of symbolization and indentation. So I am going to simply put a couple spaces here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to write another transition. And then I'm going to write a conclusion, because I know I'm going to need that. Oh my goodness, well, I'm going to spell it right, and then I'm going to put it in there, because I know I will need to label that as well. And so now, according to like the requirements, at least all my labels here are done. I'm going to put a space saver on my conclusion as well, knowing that I do not need to include that right now. So let's talk briefly about this symbolization and indentation. In our public speaking realm, we use symbols, and we know this from the concept of like rhetoric and everything else. Symbols are simply something that represents something else. Ooh, it's a crazy definition. But in our society, this is a symbol for something. I'm saying good job, or I do this to Dylan and she goes, if she's okay, she feels safe, right? So we know that. In public speaking, we utilize symbols like numbers and letters to illustrate different ideas. In your outline, each idea is only 1 point, thus 1 symbol. So we need to start to understand what these symbols are. Many people, when they outline, will throw in a bullet point. For me, that doesn't mean anything because I don't know what that bullet point symbolizes, except for maybe an idea. Instead, for public speaking, we use this series of numbers and letters to illustrate new points. And in outlining, you will note that a Word document will oftentimes want to employ its own numbering format. If you've ever been at battle with your Word document over outlining, you know what I'm going to say next is really important, to turn off your auto formatting, because nothing is worse than when you put like a 1 and then you push this and then you go to the next one and it like puts a small a and already starts to tab it for you and you're like, no. So this one doesn't have the formatting on it. But if you go back into your module for this week, you will see that I have created a link to how to remove the automatic formatting from your Word document so that you don't have to battle with those numbers. Because the way that our symbolization and indentation works is not going to be the standard on the Word document. Every single speaker or speech writer knows that these symbols indicate something specific. We use Roman numerals in this class to illustrate our main points. So every single time you write out a main point or you use this symbol, I know that whatever follows it is going to be the main point of that idea. But the main points are illustrated by Roman numerals. So Roman numerals can't be used anymore. So now we need to call in a different type of symbol, knowing that we go from number to letter to number to letter to number to letter in that order. We now will employ our use of letters. And what we use are larger letters. So A's, B's, C's, D's, capital letters, if you will. Capital letters are going to illustrate to us subpoints. These subpoints' job is to describe and support the main points. So how do subpoints work, right? Working on these A, B, C, D's. Actually, I'll do these first and then I'll go in and describe it. After you have your subpoints, let's say those subpoints need explanation. They need description. They need to be explained a little bit further. Well, I can't use Roman numerals or capitals, so I'm going to now need a number, no Roman numerals, so I'm going to go with these traditionals here, digits, and these will be illustrated by our sub points. I now need to help and describe those sub points. Oh my gosh, I have to describe it. How am I going to do so? Well, y'all, the way that I am going to do that is then by employing some more symbols, but I can't use capital letters and I need letters. So what am I going to do? I'll bring in some lower cases. You're right, everybody. Your lower cases are going to be used to describe your sub points, meaning they are supporting only that sub point, which is what? Supporting the sub point, which is supporting the main point, which is all working to support your specific purpose. Now, if we need to go one more time, we will then go to numbers again, but these will be our lowercase, Roman numerals. And these will be illustrated by our sub to the fourth point, sub points, right? Which supports the subs, which supports the sub, which supports the main, which supports the specific purpose. So the good news, hopefully, that what you are seeing is that this is going to go to a number or letter number order. If you need to go further, then you go into an AB and ABC, but we more than likely will not go past this point. What I want to start to illustrate to you, however, is also the concept that we have here both a transition and a main point that we are going to need to work on. And this is one of the most important parts of setting up your body and the skeleton successfully, is ensuring that you are writing your transition and those main points correctly. So the transition, if you remember, is to tell you what this main point is going to be. What is that main point going to be? Well, let's write maybe a thesis statement so that we can get to understanding. So if I said something like, to inform my audience about Santa Monica College, I will describe the history of the college, the certificates and degrees you can get, and some of the those student clubs and organizations you can join. Now I know that I have 3 main points that are going to be going in here. This is my thesis statement. So for example, my first transition. So could, Sydney, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, knowing about transitions, could you give me a first transition going into that first main point? So we need a signpost. So what would a signpost be? You could do something like to begin.
First.
Okay, or first here, let me tell you that. Let me take it away. First, I will describe, what's the first main point?
Describe the history of.
There you go. The history of, what's the purpose of the speech?
Santa Monica College.
Yeah. Perfect. Now, Sydney, we need to write our first main point, which funny enough is what? You just said it?
The history?
That's right. So now what am I going to write here on this first main point? Good news, everybody. I got you. Don't worry. We got this. If our transition is to tell us what this main point is about, then this first main point is to tell us what the body of that main point is going to be. The main point is going to tell you what those ABCs are going to be about, those subpoints. And so when we come here, this main point now, I have to know what in order to be able to write that main point. I need to know what I'm going to talk about in the history of Santa Monica College, correct? Cool. So what do I start to do? Let's think again about organization of something that's a history. What did we learn about patterns of organization where you hear the word history? What kind of key thing would that let you know that you could maybe organize this like?
Past, present, future.
There you go, right? So like if we wanted to talk about the history of Santa Monica College, absolutely, we could talk about like that past, present, future, right? So something about telling us about like, how is it going to go? And this is why I had you last week do all that brainstorming, Because by the time you write your thesis statement, if you're making these choices for your main points, you already know what you want to talk about within those main points. Some of those extra elements, all the details, what are going to be the supporting points that you want to illustrate about that history? Are we going to be able to give the full history? No, we know that could be an entire speech of its own. And so when we talk about symbolization, and when we talk about these, no, hold on, everybody. When I talk about the symbolization, right, the main points, what I also want us to note is that your subpoints are really going to be the key details of that point, whatever you want it to be. Know that you have 2 to 3 of these before you choose a main point. Meaning, do I have enough information in that main point to really build and develop it? So because I am not 100, well, let's see. What we could do here is do something like there are, and I don't even know, but I'm going to say 3 key moments that define the history of SMC. Now, what do I know those A, B, C's are going to be, everybody?
The 3 key moments.
There she goes. Nice ball. So what am I going to do here? Well, now I'm going to start to build it out. We talk about the indentation, remember. So I have a period here. This is one sentence. Now I know that if I put a period, I need to double space and I need to indent. Here comes my next idea. I've used a Roman numeral, so now I need a subpoint. What symbol am I going to use here to illustrate that subpoint? Is it going to be a 1?
It's a capital A.
Yay! A capital A, and I'm going to say the first moment began in 1906 when they broke ground on lot 25 of Santa, whatever, right? Period. That may need to be described. Am I going to need to describe those histories and how that built? Absolutely. And I'm going to need to go on and explain that a little bit more. So if I'm going to describe the first moment, my best idea then is to go ahead and put a B here. Sydney, tell me why I would not put a B here.
Because this is going to be your sub point.
Ooh, because I'm going to be describing the moment, right? And if I was using a B, it's going to be describing another key moment. Good job. So the B, the second key moment, began or was when, right? And then I will describe that one. The final moment, and I shouldn't do it that, because if we're talking about 3, keep consistent, 3, third moment came when blank, right? And that's how I could go forward in organizing my thoughts and ideas as to how this is going to flow. Now let's look at the second one. If we have something like certificates and degrees, I'm going to double space and I'm going to go into my next main point. Kyle, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Tell me why I would not go into my next main point. What do I need to do before I go into that next main point, Kyle?
Double space.
Yes, good. And then I'm going to put a,
Uh, transition.
yeah, there it is. Okay, so let's come back up. We're going to put this here, transition. And I'm going to say now that I discuss CUSS, the history of SMC, I will next describe the certificates and degrees you can get, right? So now, Kyle, interesting. How would we describe this? Now, knowing what I want to talk about, that would be a helpful thing. Am I going to be able to talk about every single certificate or degree program that they have at Santa Monica?
No, but you could potentially talk about the main ones that they're known for.
Hey, oh my gosh, I love it. So let's do that. Okay, cool. So let's just say, I will describe two of the most popular certificate and degree programs today, something like that. I will be, and you could even say, I will be specifically describing two of the most popular street, right? So then what am I going to use for my first symbol, Kyle?
The letter A.
What? Yeah, A, right? And so here we can go certificate programs. And now I can give this, but what type of organization are certificate programs and degree programs?
Are they an object?
Well, it's not an object because we're still talking about Santa Monica College and that's it. But the certificate and degree programs are or chronologically organized, or how do you think you could organize those? Because spatial organization won't work by direction, but you have it, they're really already organized topically, right?
Right.
Right, so those are two topics about the program, which is all working to describe Santa Monica College. So we'll say something like, two certificate programs I will discuss are the are computer programming and now I know at least, right, that those ideas are together discussed. And so now underneath here, what do we think we're going to do? Am I going to use a B to talk about the computer programming certificate? Kyle, would I use a B here, do you think?
No, because I feel like it still falls under the A category.
That's right, it does. So what do I need to do to support this A? What symbol do you think I would use? If I've used a number and a letter, now we go to a number.
Oh, number
Right.
one.
And so this one becomes the one, and this would be, of course, written in a full sentence, double space, and then your two will be communication certif, right? And then the B is going to be what, everybody? Oh, the degree program. And then that 1 and 2 will be those two different programs. Does this start to make sense a little bit? And then once, if I needed to describe that computer programming certificate, y'all, I'm going to start building it out with my other symbols. Let's say I want to expand upon that. Maybe it is there, right? Now, I will encourage each of you to continue with because this isn't the full lecture of outlining, but what I do want to encourage is for each of us to take a look at the, where did I put it? Sample skeleton here. wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. Mhm. All right, so it's here in this one. This is from our rhetorical arts class at LMU, but you can see here, this is the same idea and the same skeleton and the same education. You're just getting it for like $60,000 less. Okay. So, I mean, really, like I teach them the exact same thing. Anywho, so if you see here, it has been written for your skeleton, all you are required to do is complete your, everything in this MLA format. So doing your title, your header, title of the speech, general purpose, specific purpose, thesis statement, labeling your introduction, the body, your transitions. All you need to write out in full for this assignment are your transitions, your main points, and your subpoints. This allows me to see that you have the basic understanding of organization, that you know where your speech is going to go, and that you know how it's maybe going to be organized. And then 3, that you have this correct framework of double spacing, single spacing, indentation, and symbolization so that we can make sure it's right now and not like in week 9 and 10 after spring break. So that's why I want you to do this. But all you have to do for this assignment is do your, the main points and then the subpoints. If you see here, I'm going to also give you, I don't know if I need to leave my room. Somebody in here, you know me, I get panicked that I've stolen somebody's room. On our homepage, one more time. If you see here, oh, and I'm sorry, I wrote it in, it's not there. It's here. But it's in the module as well, so you can always just look at it there. Oh my gosh, I'll just go to the module, Amanda. Go to the module. So here is the assignment, writing the informative speech skeleton and assignment. So what I have done here is I've written you out a rough skeleton assignment. The following assignment is asking you to roughly outline the main and the subpoints. So those are the rules and the ABCs of your speech. The rules and guidelines for writing the preparation outline are to be followed. So see that outlining handout for reminders, which I gave you on that sheet. And when we went through those specific things today. The rough skeleton should be written in proper MLA format. And remember, if you do not know how to write a proper MLA format, I have given you another example right here. Write your general purpose, specific purpose thesis statement, and then make sure that you're labeling those introductions, body, conclusions as placeholders, just so that I know that you're there. And then here's the example again of writing that transition into your first main point. And I pretty much am just explaining that there. And then here is a sample skeleton for you. So hopefully with each of these particular pieces of information and really like me going over this today, you've started to get a little bit of a better understanding about how these things are organized and how they work. I don't know if that's like true. Are you in here? Oh no. Yes. Okay. Hold on one second. I gotta leave. Anyway, I need to leave because I need to leave this class. You need to leave because you need to leave this class. But here's the deal. Sign up for your assignment if you haven't yet come in to sign up for something that we can't, meaning your conference. Note that if you have yet to get me a specific purpose for approval, I need to look at that, but I can also always go back in and approve something should you need to look at it. If I haven't looked at it yet, I will look at it by the end of the day, I promise, because it just hasn't gone up there yet. And the last thing that I want to say is come to our fun conferences, because that will enable us the opportunity to write this all out together. If you have yet to watch the outlining in full assignment, make sure you do so that you know how to organize and how to correctly finish that assignment. And otherwise, you all are awesome. And I gotta go, but I'm here and I will in fact absolutely see y'all soon. So see you soon. Let me know how I can help you and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thanks so
Bye,
much.
thank you.
Bye. Thank
You.
you. Oh, let me stop this recording and stopping and ending.